led by myself. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have a moment of silence. All right, now I got a question I need to ask the board. Are y'all in favor of having this at the same way on Thursday night?
Yes.
Good with it.
Okay, got that? Did you get that head shake vote? Okay, thank you. All right, number 4, Mr. Spurlock.
All right, number 4 is going to be the review of the Fund 143, Centralized Cafeteria Fund Budget. And Mr. Boder, you want to carry us through some of the increases, decreases, anything that impact that budget?
Yes, sir. You have in your packet the Fund 143, which is a school nutrition fund for our centralized cafeteria operation. Of course, just on a couple of the highlights is the lunch payments you see, of course, up top, and the breakfast payments. That is from our students and the adults actually, that are actually paying for the meals. That's their charges. Currently, our pricing in those line items is, as approved by the board, it's breakfast, all students, $1.50. Breakfast for teachers and staff, $2 a meal. And that's the same price for a visitor. For breakfast, $2. Lunch for pre-K through 5 is $2.75. Lunch 6th grade through 12th grade is $3. Lunch for all teachers and staff is $3.80. That's the same for a visitor. And a holiday meal for visitors of all ages is $5. Going down, just to show the down the line items here, we see just modest increases of revenue. We're budgeting for a 2% increase of revenue. That includes the additional students that we've increased by this year. Going down into the line items for the expenditures, see payroll, supervisor, director, which is two individuals. That is the nutrition director and the assistant director in that line item. The bookkeepers, there's 2 in the second line item from 119. Cafeteria personnel, that's 467. That's the cafeteria managers at the individual cafeteria sites and their staff. Then the other salary and wages are 6 field supervisors and a free reduced processing clerk. That totals 477 total employees, which is 131 full-time employees, 346 part-time employees, for a total of 477 employees in that fund. Below that is, of course, their benefits and the employer match at FICA. Then down into the non-payroll line items, we see one thing I'd like to point out, or 2 things I'd like to point out on the non-payroll expenditure line items. In 599 other charges, you see for the first time it's a $20,350. What that increase is it's $11,850 for the automation system, and this will allow us, we use this software in other departments here at the school system. This will enable a barcoding system, electronic barcoding system, to be used for the very large volume of invoices that we receive from all the individual cafeterias for everything from milk to food preparation supplies. All that, of course, combines in just a very voluminous amount of invoices coming up from the couriers, the inter-school couriers to my office, and comprises a lot of time and manual processing of those invoices on a weekly basis. And this automation system will allow that we can do that electronically now, save a lot of time in only the cafeteria's processing, but my office. So a lot less errors, encoding errors, and payments to make sure the vendors get their payments timely and that we're making sure we're paying the correct amount. The balance of that $20,350 that's left is for the electronic timekeeping software system and training. We're going to be placing, starting next year, we will start rolling out, and as the 3-year plan that the board approved, the strategic plan, we will start electronic timekeeping, and that will be, one of the first departments will be our nutrition department. That, of course, will be able to more accurately track time, which is, of course, labor's one of the large drivers of the nutrition department. So we'll be going away from the paper timesheets next year.
When you look at the return on investment for this $20,000, what would you think we were getting, taking into consideration the labor and taking consideration of the errors? We would recapture a lot more than $20,000. Would that be safe?
That's a very safe assumption, being that right now, because of the lag, the amount of time we have to spend with paper timesheets, we actually, in order to get all of the paper up to the courthouse, we're actually paying in advance, several days each pay period, 2-week pay period, just so we can get the paper up there. And because of that, I guess right now is a great point, or this point of time right now. What are we going to be doing next week? Who knows? And a person can, and just in a normal time, an employee gets sick, an employee has a child that's sick, well, then they have to go back and revise their timesheet. And that means 2 weeks later, we're having a large amount of revised timesheets in this office and up to the county courthouse for amending the payroll for 2 weeks before that. With the electronic timekeeping, there's no lag time. We're done. It's just like what's happening for the last decade. Most of the county departments have been on this exact same payroll system, electronic payroll system, for a decade. So we're going to bring ourselves up to them with this. We can accurately capture labor costs. And once again, that'll be the eventual goal, is to have all of the classified hourly employees on this timekeeping system. Be a couple years, but I think it's very doable. The other item that you'll see that's a good variance is on the 710, the equipment line item. We, talking with Eric Smith, the nutrition director, he halved that, and we've actually froze all equipment purchases for this current fiscal year unless it is completely broke. We're not going to replace it. If we can repair it, we're going to do that no matter how old it is. And it's because of what the current situation we have right now. We're trying to save cash flow to take care of our employees and make sure that when we start back up, we have cash flow to start up operations. If it's not this fiscal year, then this school year, then next school year. Because just like a restaurant, these cafeterias are going to need some cash before they open the door to get their food, everything ready to go. Does anyone have any questions on this fund?
What about the postage here? I noticed we didn't have any postage, and all of a sudden we've got 2,500.
Yes, sir. The postage on that line item for 348 for postage, we added that, and thank you for pointing out. That's going to be, because we need to talk about that too, is that $2,500, place that in the budget to give them funding in the nutrition department for mailing out notices to parents for delinquent meal balances. Up until now, what they were doing was they were going to their school office with the principal and the bookkeeper and asking for postage, and this would give them an actual budget of their own so they could be more aggressive with letting parents know, hey, your child has a meal balance, and we could talk about that if you like. Does that answer your question, Mr. Young?
Yeah, I was just curious where that came from.
While you're on that, if we can talk a little bit about the lunch charges.
Yes, on the,
Okay, in 16-17, the board paid a deficit of $45,998 in lunch charges. In 17-18, it was $89,323 the board paid. 18-19, $111,527.69. Currently, at 19-20, we were sitting a little over 234,000.
we're right at, it's $233,891.99, and that is after year-to-date donations of $64,547.
If we extrapolated that, if we were in school and your projection going from March the 17th through, if we were still in school, what would you think that ending balance would end up being?
We'd easily be over 300,000 and possibly even 325, and that's getting close. We're getting close to about 40% worth
And
of
that's,
opinion.
we're
on the
talking
tax
about
levy.
141, that's money coming out of 141.
It's all coming out of the general purpose school fund on the tax levy.
Right. You know, one of the things that Mr. Boder and I are talking about, you know, I think we'd all agree that's not sustainable. When you look at some of our schools, you know, and we look at the high percentage of free and reduced lunch, even some of those, especially in our high schools, even where they free and reduced lunch, it's still very high charges. So you would think that would probably be correlate to free and reduced lunch, but it doesn't. I think we do have a few middle schools that way. And then we also have some schools that have a low percentage of free and reduced lunch that have a high percentage.
That's correct. There's no correlation to, you would think that it would be the higher the free
Right.
reduced than you would think, but back on your point with as it's growing, we are right now, our balance right now is almost the last 3 fiscal years bad debt combined. That's the balance we have right now. And like I said, it would have kept growing if we had not stopped.
You know, we want to make sure that every child gets fed, and we will make sure that every child gets fed. We're going to be working with our principals. I think Mr. Boder and I talked about it. We're going to be working with our principals, looking at ways that we can, you know, maybe perhaps, have an opportunity to reduce some of this. I don't know if we'll ever wipe it out completely, but I think we'd all agree, $300,000 coming out of your general purpose school fund, I mean, that's not sustainable. You're taking money out of, you're taking money out of classrooms and things of that nature. And so that's going to be a big project for us, and I think it's doable. I think talking over with Mr. Boder, there's some things that some of our principals are doing that are very effective, and I think there's some things, for example, that Mr. Boder will talk about, I think on Thursday, with the refunding back the activity money that the kids had in expenditures. Is that correct? You want to talk about it on Thursday?
Yes, sir. We had this in mind with on the policy that the board will vote on this Thursday with the refund when we prepared the procedures for that policy. So, and I don't want to get ahead of myself on Thursday, but basically to let you know is what you'll be looking at on Thursday with this refund. It's a refund policy. The state comptroller is wanting to make sure that we have something on the books to have good internal control and a good procedure for when we give out a large amount of refunds, which will probably include cash refunds. And like I said, we'll talk more about that on Thursday, but one of the things that we have placed in my staff and I were working on this to make sure when we had a good uniform procedure for these refunds to the students and parents, we also had in mind to make sure the school bookkeepers coordinate with the cafeteria managers at their respective schools to identify those students that have meal balances that also have refunds due, to not force a refund, but to request the parent, to notify the parent that, you know, hey, your student has money due in meals to your school. And what we're finding from the principals that at the schools that are actually, you know, reaching out to parents actively, they're finding out a lot of times the parents don't know their child has a balance due. They just gave money to their child to go to school, and it didn't find its way to the nutrition department. So this is a process that, once again, would be uniform, that we would be able to let the parents be aware.
And I think everybody's dealing with it somewhat, but they're dealing with it a little bit better. I sat in a webinar today, this afternoon, and one of the first hours, there was a question came up to Chuck Cagle about, from one of the directors of schools, can we put into an agreement policy where if a kid has a deficit that he or she owes, and there is a return, like he's talking about, and it's not always going to occur, and they sign off on it, that we're able to put that in there, that if we're going to give you a return, we're also going to subtract what you owe from that return. Now, we can't do it this year, obviously, but it might be something going forward we can look at, because I think a lot of times, especially when they get in high school, there is a lack of communication between the school and the parents, and it kind of gets out of hand very quickly.
Does anyone else have any questions on this fund?
Mr. Bowdre, I do. On just a question and then a thought that I'll toss out there. I remember, at least the last time I had one in school and was using the cafeteria, that there's an online resource. Are we still using that?
Yes, ma'am.
Where it set up the cafeteria fund. So are they still allowed to do it manually, though? They don't have to sign up for the electronic?
They can bring their money in too.
Okay, okay. So are those mostly the ones then that we're finding parents don't know about it? Because with the online, the parents get email reminders, trust me, they do, that the child's balance is low or,
Right.
money left.
The schools, and like Mr. Rock was saying, that in the schools that you'll see some of the lower balances, because we reached out, we wanted to know what are the cafeteria managers and principals doing in those schools with the lower balances. And some of them, what we found was they would encourage the parent that if they saw, when they contacted the parent was like, well, I had no idea that my child had, worked up this large meal balance. They of course directed them to the online payment. Right. And that, of course, has been success with some of the meal balances going down. Like I said, the reason I bring this up is because, like I said, it's grown to such a size, and it is such dramatically growing so fast. Absolutely. And that was before the issue we're dealing with now. Obviously.
Well, and Mr. Spurlock is right. I mean, this is a lot of money, and it's unsustainable. And I'm going to toss something out there. It's a bit extreme, and I'm guessing that we probably couldn't even think about doing this, but I'm going to say it anyway. When you're in college, if you don't pay your bills, if you haven't paid your parking ticket or finished paying off your meal ticket, you don't get your grades. I don't know if that's something, I know it's extreme, that we could look at, saying, hey, we're going to hold the child's report card or whatever till the parent catches their meal balance up. Just a thought.
Yeah, you really can't withhold the grades, but that's would be one way to get it, but you really can't do that legally. However, I think there are some things that we've talked about that will work. I think we've got to get and I'm not saying they don't, because they got a lot but we've got to get our principals to take this, not that they're not, but I think that there's a wide range of who's being effective and who isn't being effective. And I think maybe if we can get some good practices that they have and bring this committee together and come up with some ideas that can at least reduce what we're seeing.
Mr. Spurlock, if I may, I'm thinking about something on our Rutherford County website, just what our total lunch debt is. That way, there's no identification as far as an individual or a school, but surely the parents would like for us to spend $300,000 on our students and not lunch. So I don't think that we're not being transparent, but I think once parents realize that there is an issue out there, I think that they will be more cognizant of it and address it.
You may have a point there. I mean, it may be a good idea.
Just a suggestion.
Anyone else?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Yeah. I think everything should be used.
Mr. Spurlock, I have a question. My children attend a school, Rockville Middle, and when they get a balance at all, we get a phone call from the nutrition department. Does every school utilize that system? Okay, so parents are already being notified.
Yes, ma'am, by that, the ones that do it all, that put in, yes, ma'am.
Anyone else?
What's alarming to me is how fast this is, you know, we went from 89,000 to almost 300,000 here in just a few years. You're right, it's not sustainable, and I don't know how we've gotten there so quick. What's causing this to get out of control so?
You know, I can't really put a finger on it, but I do know that it's pretty prevalent not only in the state of Tennessee, but throughout our country. I don't know what's taking place, you know, that would create that. You know, we do know there's some trends that are pretty obvious. High school, you know, high schools. You know, one of the things that Mr. Boulder and I were just theorizing, of course, Mr. Boulder hadn't been in high school for a long time, have you, Mr. Boulder? But we have these stores. Career and Technical Education usually runs some of these stores in these high schools. And some, not all, sometimes a student will come in and have money for lunch. You know, they may not be the ones that put it in their account. And they go in the store and they buy something, you know, maybe some kind of food. And then they may go to the cafeteria and charge their lunch. So, you know, we're going to look, and that could be a small portion. I don't think it's going to run up to $300,000, but I think that can be part of, there's some things like that are occurring. You know, if you'll recall, when, I can't remember what year it was when Murfreesboro started giving, you know, everyone had free breakfast. I think they still do that, you know, and sometimes, you know, lack of a better word, some people will take advantage of things. And I mean, we would be remiss if we didn't say that's what's occurring here. Not all, but there's obviously some taking advantage of the situation. But what we've got to do is, you know, obviously no one wants to shame a child. I mean, there was a law brought up. I think it didn't pass. Am I correct on that?
I'm not,
You know, but anyway,
At the same time, we still got to teach them accountability.
absolutely.
This is
I
not-
like that. Accountability.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
This,
This will be a major emphasis of trying to, you know, redirect some of these issues for us going forward.
Mr. Spurlock, can we enforce all the children who eat in the cafeteria to sign up electronically through that program?
You know what, I'd have to ask, I don't know. I'd have to ask Ms. Page. I don't know, you know, it may be something we could make a big, you know, make a concentrated effort to have them do that. I mean, maybe there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat. We could probably do some things. Maybe make it a big emphasis at the beginning of the year, you know?
That probably could go back to, like you and I were discussing about bringing some of the principals in to
Right.
be on a committee, and that's a good point, just for
Right.
them to, you know, because we want to see the principals that are having in the schools with the best practices. You know, no need to reinvent the wheel. Let's just make the best practices be uniform and have that as a policy.
I'm not sure how much and keep in mind, we got quite a amount of donations earlier at the end of the fall, did we not? You know how much money was, like 30 or 40,000?
Our total was $64,547 to date.
That was donated to us?
Yes, sir. That's
a lot
to
of money
date.
right there.
Can I ask from the schools that the donations, because the donations were made to specific schools, correct? Most of them?
Some of them were, yes, ma'am. They were. We've had. You're correct. We've had not just businesses, but even lately we've had just donors walk in as individuals and say, I'd like to take care of for Oakland. I'll use Oakland Middle as an example. We had an individual that said, I want to be anonymous. And they just took care of all the outstanding meal debt for quite a few of the children over there.
That's wonderful. Those schools, before we were out of school, did those schools recharge? Did you see those charges reinflate?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we watch every month. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I wonder who was going to ask that question, but that's right.
Okay.
Mr. Spurlock, since we have a relationship with the credit union and they're going to do that card, perhaps maybe that's something that we can put together and that they
Anything that, yeah, I think
that
we
they
gotta,
can do some financial leadership, education, responsibility.
I think everything's on the table. I'll be honest with you. I think we'd all agree with that. I mean, everything that we can do, we'll have to, and that'll be a big emphasis going forward.
I know, because my son was the world's worst in that, and he, y'all know he's 6 foot tall and he liked to eat. There were some months his lunch was $150, which was a whole lot. But, you know, you just kind of have to stay on top of it. And there would be some weeks that I would pre-fund his account. You know, that may be something that we need to look into, maybe pre-funding $20 a week or something like that. So it's not such a huge amount to have to pay off at one time. Because, you know, a single mother, we all know how the finances go.
All right. Anyone else on cafeteria fund? All right, let's move on to 177.
Do we need a motion to approve this?
If you would, so we can forward that to health.
Yeah, okay. Make a motion to approve the cafeteria fund, 143 for the 2020-2021 school year as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Now we'll go to 177.
177, the review of that capital projects budget.
Would you like me to go through the revenue and expenditures and then Mr. Lee?
Yeah.
Talk about the
That'd be
individual?
fine.
Okay. On the second page that you have is the Fund 177. That is the capital project fund. We've got budgeted in there currently the same tax levy that the county commission levied for this fund in the current year, which is 7.5 cents. Penny, the $7,161,010 in the current property tax line item, that breaks down to a penny, bringing $954,801.33. I just got a update on what the penny is going to bring. The unshared penny will be $957,177. That is as of to date with the pickups. That, of course, is what a penny brings. That is not shared on the weighted average with the city school system. When we go to the, here in a couple weeks, to the 141 fund, the general purpose school fund, of course, the penny on the property tax is shared. 15% of that, 15.08% of that is shared with the city of Murfreesboro. So a penny for education that is shared, that will be over at the, in the general purpose school fund, will generate $812,835. Whereas, like I said, in this fund, because it's not shared per state statute, it is generating $957,177. Now, what I have in front of you today was the amount, the estimated amount per penny before I just got this just a little bit ago. And I'm showing it a penny generating $954,801.33, which is a difference of $2,375. So, of course, we're pretty close right here on this.
Pretty close.
You see right there, we have the current property tax estimate, then the trustees' collections for prior year delinquent. If it goes over to the clerk and master for legal action, unpaid, the $39,370. Interest and penalty generated for delinquent property taxes, estimated at $13,520. Pickup taxes after the date is $8,450. A small amount of payment in lieu of taxes, TVA, $516. Drop down, we get a small portion of business tax, and that's budgeted conservatively at $196,000. Give us a total of revenue for that fund, $7,483,066. Drop down to the expenditure side of that budget. In 510, we have the trustee commission that they take from the property tax, budgeted at $160,000, and that leaves in that fund $7,323.66. I'm sorry, $7,323,066. That's what's budgeted and available for the capital projects in next year's budget. If you flip the page, you'll see the capital project request. And that number, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Lee so he can go into detail about these requests. But if you look at the very top to the very far right, where it says 2021 on the capital project request sheet, you'll see that amount, that's $7,323,066. It ties to the budget amount for expenditures that's available for our capital improvements. And I'll just let Mr. Lee, unless anyone has a question on the revenue expenditure side of this, I'll turn this over to Mr. Lee so he can go through the details of each capital project that he's going to be requesting. Any questions? Okay.
All right, you basically have seen this before. This is the running total that we started a couple of years ago. The left side is capital projects that we see that we continually add to as roofs change, numbers change, what roof is priority changes. So some of that's changed a little bit. Also, what you have tonight that was laid out when you got here, you have two other breakdowns. One is the school maintenance request. One is the school capital projects request. Both of these items come from the schools themselves. Every year we send out a questionnaire to the principals at each school and says, technology, staffing, building and grounds, maintenance, capital projects, tell us what your needs are. And this year, I wanted you all to be able to see how we come up with our numbers and what the schools are asking for. So they're basically just for your information. The school maintenance requests, typically those items, they're in the anywhere from $5 to usually around $15,000, and those get distributed and paid for throughout the year through our general purpose school fund. That's part of our general purpose budget, maintenance account. The capital projects are the large items that we typically ask for, and on the capital projects request, the running total, if you look at the very bottom, on the left side, it's $2,939,960. That's what the schools have requested this year. That's the total. What I have included in our request as part of the $7,323,066 request is $1,004,000 of that $2,006,000. So roughly 50%, a little less than 50% of the items that the schools have asked for, we've requested in capital projects. The other thing I wanted you to have this for is in your leisure time, which we don't all have as much as we would like. Just look at some of the things that the schools ask for. I don't think any of these items are someone from my staff or myself has gone and physically looked at every single item. If it's on this list, it's a justified request. There are some items that we don't get to this list, and I'll use you an example. Let's say a principal asks for new football stadium lights. Well, that's a $300,000 or $500,000 request, and so that typically doesn't make it onto this list. It's in here on my overall capital projects as part of the LED lighting request. That's down at the bottom. That's a savings that we can get into later. But anyway, so over on the far right is what we're proposing to request for the 2020-2021 school year. One thing I will bring to your attention is about a month ago, you all voted to approve our budget amendments for the capital projects for this current year. As a part of that, you voted to appropriate in this coming school year, 2021, $1.5 million to complete the central Magnet HVAC unit project. I'm sure you all remember that because the bids came in more so than that. When we carried that proposal to the Health and Education Committee, they vetoed that request and sent it back. So I say all that to say this, the $1.5 million to do that project is not in this request, which means the HVAC project at Central Magnet is basically on hold. And I want you to understand that as we go through this, that $1.5 million is not there. It's a choice for you guys. If you all want Mr. Spurlock and I to carry the $1.5 million back as part of this request, then what I would do, and I can tell you what I would do, but I would amend a couple of these other line items to reduce them, to add in the $1.5 million to complete the HVAC. Am I clear as mud? It's not there. So I want to go through but just briefly what's on this request list, see if you've got any questions, and we'll go from there. So if you flip to the second page, you'll see everything in the right-hand column are the items that we have prioritized, reduced. We're saying these are things that we got to have. It's everything from maintenance vehicles. I've got $102,000 for additional portable growth. If we were with the delay in getting the schools built, there's potential for needing a couple of portables. Secondary backup server, that's a large item, $500,000. We actually need $2 million, but we think we can get by for a year or so with $500,000. Come on down. It's various requests, and when you get to the back page, it's $7,323,066, and I'm asking for $1.4 million of the principal's $2.9 million capital projects request. So basically, about 45% of what they're asking for is included in this.
That must be a tough process to have to whittle those down.
It's not fun, no ma'am.
Can we go back to the Central Magnet?
Sure.
Question?
Yes ma'am.
Just to make sure and wrap my head around this and understand, did they strip that $1.5 million from the budget completely then? Is that what?
No ma'am, what we were requesting is we had $2.1 million left in this year's budget because we spent $380,000 of our $2.5 million at Blackman.
Okay.
So that reduced us to $2.1 million. So when we bid out Central Magnet, the job came in $3.6 million. So we only had $2 million in this year's budget.
Okay.
And we approved spending that $2 million to get the job started with the caveat that we would allocate $1.5 million in this budget that we're talking about tonight, next year's budget.
Make up the difference.
To complete the project. And what the County Health and Ed Commission told us was they weren't willing to commit the 1.5, vote to commit it. So therefore, we had to put it on hold because we don't have enough to complete the job.
And this is funded out of property tax.
Yes, sir.
And I think we're about 96% collection rate, is that correct?
Yes, sir. The property tax for this fiscal year is all but been collected.
That's what I'm saying. So it's not like it's not there, but I guess you could say that they may be taking, only thing I could deduce from it is they may be taking some pennies back away from it.
That's kind of where I think they were headed with that by turning it down, is based on where the climate is as a whole for the county, that they're either going to reduce this $7 million to something else. You know, instead of being 7 cents, it may be 5, it may be 4, or they may not give us anything at all.
So was there a specific reason why the Central Magnet HVAC, because we've been talking about that for years.
And they made that exact same comment, that it's been talked about for years. They were fully aware of it. But I think till they got further into the budget process, they were unwilling to commit $1.5 million to that project additional.
And I think what created the issue with us overall was the unseen problem with Blackman.
Yes.
If you recall, we took money from that account in thinking that we could recoup it following, and no one saw this coming. Obviously, I don't think the commission saw this coming, but
No.
we definitely didn't see it coming.
I think if we were not in this situation with the virus and the uncertainty of funding a lot of things, I think they would have probably said, fine, no problem, if it had been a normal year.
It's pretty much a non-issue, if not for all these.
And that's the way I kind of felt. So basically, we're sitting here with $2 million that we have allocated for Central Magnet that I'm unwilling to turn the contractor loose because I don't have the $1.5 million to go with it. If they were to turn this money loose, let's say in a month, and we decide we want to do that Central Magnet, we go back down here and I take a couple hundred here, a couple hundred there, and I would come back and tell you what that is, where we've taken that money to get back to putting the $1.5 million for Central Magnet back in.
So we did that with Blackman, took the money from Central Magnet to get that taken care of because it was an
Yes, ma'am.
situation. Are there, and there's a lot of HVAC repairs on here on the budget. I mean, are there others that are not, in your opinion, as hot or high a priority as getting the Central Magnet taken care of?
Central Magnet is the one that is in the most imminent danger of failure at this time. That's why I don't have any. There are some here that the others that are on this list, which is a very large list. I've got a number of them shown that they need to be done in year one, but they're not showing up this year because they're all big hitters, $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million, and I'm trying to piecemeal. If you'll look down through there, I've got $35,000 for one item. I've got, $50,000, $100,000. I'm trying to piecemeal a long list of things with $7 million. And I don't know if I'm answering your question correctly, but there are other HVAC issues. Am I expecting one of them to be in central shape this year? No. In a year to 2 years, am I expecting some to be in Central's position? Yes, ma'am.
So I guess the question at the end of the day is, what happens if that system does crash and burn?
If that system crashes and burns, that's a very good question, and I'm glad you asked it. Central Magnet, if that system crashes and burns, I'm going to come to you guys and recommend we spend $600,000 to put in a new chiller. Now, when we do that, that's going to commit us to the exact same HVAC system they have right now, which is how old, Mr. Jordan? Quite a few years.
49, it was a school.
Yes, sir. So that's 50, so 60, 70 years old. A lot of those heating units and the piping, that's my big concern, is the piping in the building is 70 years old. We are going to commit $600,000 to a system that's on its last leg right now to continue with a two-pipe system, which means it's what they have now. They either have heat or they have air, and it's not the most efficient in the world. I'd rather spend $600,000 on a new system. We're going to spend $600,000 that's going to keep us in the same boat, and if we decide to go back to the new system, we've thrown that $600,000 out the window.
How long will that, if we have to spend the $600,000, how long will that buy us?
That system, the chiller itself, would last probably 18 to 20 years. But I can tell you this much, and I've shown Mr. Spurlock the pictures. The piping system that transfers the water to the units back to the chiller is not. I've got piping underneath the gym floor right now that I'm scared if a plumber touches it, it's going to collapse.
So say worst case scenario, we end up in a situation where the piping then needs to be addressed. How much do we even know what we'll have to throw at that?
a little over $500,000 at what we can get to.
So we're getting right back up to the,
You're fixing to spend $1.1 million on a system that's 50, 70 years old.
So if that were to happen, and you did the 600,000, the piping wasn't taken care of, and that became an issue, wait a minute, let me back up. I think I'm asking this question wrong. Let's say we had all the money we need to go ahead and take care of this, that $1.5 million wasn't pulled off the table.
Okay?
And we could do a new HVAC system for Central Magnet. Does that automatically take care of the piping, or is the piping still going to be an issue?
No, that does take care of the HVAC piping. Yes, it does.
And is that the piping you're concerned about? Or
There's
is there other?
HVAC piping, and then I've got plumbing piping. The HVAC piping is roughly worth about $500,000. There's another $250,000 to $300,000 worth of plumbing piping, which is domestic water that feeds your commodes and sinks and all that kind of stuff that brings all that. That is a problem as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Blair made his motion. He knew, I think, and I have talked to him, and I watched it twice. It was a good motion, and he was right. It wasn't going to pass. I think he knew that, but he was trying. After it didn't get a second, I was kind of glad, and the reason I was glad was I knew it wasn't going to pass, didn't think so, and I don't want to know what comes next, which you've already alluded to. I don't want to know what the next step is. Now, it seems I've put words in the director's mouth here, but I think I'm right on this. They seem to have mixed up the property tax losses with, well, I didn't say that right. The sales tax losses with the property tax losses. And in this particular case, they're not related. Now, and I think it's fair to say that the county commission is very concerned, and rightly so, as we all are, with how much money are we going to be short, the whole county as a whole, come late June, when we pass the budget for the year. So they don't know how much, and as far as I'm aware, that's the first time that this has ever happened. We used to have reasonably accurate estimates, and Lisa Nolan does a marvelous job with that. But now there's just, because we don't know whether we're going back to school or not. We don't know whether people are going to be allowed to go eat or shop or anything else and pay sales tax. So they don't know how much money they have. Now, with that said, let me say this. After that meeting the other night with Mr. Lee and Director Spurlock and Mr. Blair, and to a certain extent, Mr. Gurley, the county commission, well, the Health and Ed Committee at least, is very aware that we are rolling the dice with Central Magnet School heat and air system. It could go out tomorrow, and it's not going to last that much longer. They know that. Now, if I don't know what exactly you want from us, whether you take it back or not and request it again and go through this process again, that would be sort of my recommendation that we do that, because I think we're right. I'm convinced that we're right. We've been talking about this, well, how long? 3 years? 2 years? Two anyway. That's how we're going. Yeah, I think so too. But we're going to put it into 2 parts and split the cost and maybe help with the pain a little bit. I think we ought to, I'm not going to make a motion yet because I want to hear any discussion y'all want to make, but it seems to me that another request is in order. This is not a very nice thing to say maybe, and I don't want to be Well, as I say, I was not at that meeting. I did watch it I taped it. Still have it, if you'd like to see it again. They're scared. They are. And I get that. I've been there a little bit myself, but they're scared about how much money they're going to have, or maybe better said, how much money they're not going to have. And I think I probably need to shut up at this point and let somebody else talk.
I think it's a fair request. If we can get this request through, what makes us think we can get any other request through? If they're going to turn down HVAC, then why are they not going to turn down the paving or anything else we asked for? We know this is a priority. It has been for a few years, so I think we go back with this request. And if they're not going to pass this request, then we can forget all the capital requests, because I don't think they're going to do any of it.
And I think one of the things that was brought up and was that, well, we gave it to you and you didn't use, you'd used it somewhere else. We used it on, last time I checked, we went to Health and Ed. We amended that so that we could use it to take care of Blackman, with the understanding that we would come back the next fiscal year, this coming fiscal year. That was my point. We knew this. We went before that committee before to get permission to amend
The budget to do what we did, to spend the money for Blackman, with the understanding that we would have to come back for additional funding that would come out of the future, which is the budget we're talking about now, 2021 budget. My big concern, and I don't want to be Don Quixote, but y'all know, I think you do well enough to know I'm fairly conservative. I've got a fear that in the next 2 to 3 years, these kind of things where we're running up against imminent failure are going to become more and more prevalent.
In this particular case, I said I wasn't going to say anything else, and now here I am talking again. They knew that. They voted on it, the same people. And I don't think, I searched, I went back through some earlier stuff that we voted on. I think we did that exactly right. I don't know what else we could have done. We were transparent as all get out about what we were going to have to do at Central, and then why we had to move to Blackman. And at that meeting, you just told them that 15 minutes before in your conversation as to where the money went. They already knew all of that. And they were mad about it. And they did it. We didn't do it. We made a request. Open, transparent request as to what we were trying to do, which was to save Blackman from roasting to death, which we did. It was the right thing to do. So I don't know if we're going to place the blame here, and if I can quote the director, and I will, he said, "Don't put this on us." And he was exactly right.
So, Mr. Lee, I hope you're not flailing at windmills. But as I'm listening to your fears, of course, what's going to happen if that does come to fruition, your fears, is we're going to wind up paying a whole lot more for it in the long run anyway.
Yes, ma'am. That's
Not
100%.
just Central
We're going to
Magnet,
waste.
but these others also.
Yes, ma'am. That's exactly correct.
I know we hadn't put in the form of a motion or anything, but I would agree that as well, that we need to take it back to the committee.
If I may. I watched the meeting, and if my memory serves me right, I think they just tabled it. And it may be, I don't know that I think we did everything right. I think the county, I think Mr. Jordan is correct where they are afraid, because between now and the time in May that they said when we actually get our numbers in, we don't know what's going to happen between now and then, and we don't know either. We as the county don't know, and we as the school system don't know. And it may be that these that Mr. Lee just gave us turn into wish lists. And just like our house, if our roof goes bad, we've got to take care of the roof. We have to take care of our HVAC, and some of these other things that we have requested, which are totally valid things, are going to have to be prioritized. And I think certainly our HVAC and things like that should be prioritized, and our teachers' raises. and some of these other things. It's going to be a hard, difficult year for us and for the county commissioners. And I think everybody just needs to take a deep breath. The hardest thing about this, I was speaking with Drew from the TEA, the hardest thing about this is it's unknown for the parents, it's unknown for the teachers, it's unknown for the administrators. And once we get a game plan together, I think it's going to be a whole lot better. We're going to get back together, everybody's going to do what needs to be done. But until then, I think we need to look at what we need to prioritize and what actually, absolutely positively, maintenance request has to be done.
Mr. Lee, if we bring it back, I guess we're going to need to know what we're going
Sure.
to take out.
And I can tell you that
Yeah.
very briefly.
If you do that,
Yes, ma'am. If we stay with the 7 million, we're going to keep under the assumption that we're going to get the 7,323,000, and we're going to put the central magnet in. We would drop down here to on page 2, Oakland High School, Riverdale High School paving. I would recommend taking both of those completely away. John Coleman Annex, I would reduce it from 450 to 250. That's 600,000 on page 2. Page 3, the central office relocation renovation, I would reduce it from 350 to 150. The camera DVR program under safety, I would work with Safe Schools, and we would try and use more of their funds, those funds to boost the DVRs. I'd take all of that $500,000. So there would be 700,000 on page 3. Page 4, the locks for our schools, I would reduce it from 515 to 315. That's taking 200,000 there. And that gets our $1.5 million.
okay, if the board would like, if we could bring this amended back on Thursday.
Yes, sir.
To vote on it, which would include the central.
Magnet, $1.5 million. Yes, sir. I'll just clean this up, make these few changes, and bring it back to you on Thursday. I was looking for direction. I guess mostly tonight I wanted to have discussion and look for direction.
And the idea that it would be presented to the Health and Ed the next time they meet.
I think it's the 20, it's not next week, the week after next? Is it Tuesday after? 28.
Yes.
If, when everything goes back to work and our money, I'm sure this year, next year, it's not going to be back to what we've had, or the increase anyway. I would like to see us ask for what we need, just as if it's going on, and then if they cut us enough that we have to go back and do this kind of stuff, then we can go back and cut it at a later time.
I think the concern that I have on, and I hear you, Chairman, Mr. Chairman, the concern that I have is if we put in there what if, I mean, a contingency, if we don't get it, we cannot go out to bid to get that project started.
That's correct. That's why we need to, I think I'm operating under the assumption right now we're going to request a 7.3 just like we got this year, and this is our request. And then if they tell us no, then at that point, I guess we back up and punt. They're going to have to tell us what they're going to do, whether it's going to be this or a different version or nothing at all. Eventually, they got to tell us of the three. Now, I guess in a way that kind of leads me to Thursday night. We have, and I've been very candid with this board. We've talked about this $90 million worth of stuff that every year grows. We started out at $20 million my first year. with the understanding that we were just beginning our analysis and this list was going to grow. And I've presented it to you every 3 or 4 months as an update so that you, as a board, knew where we stood. We've talked about 3 ways that we can fund getting these taken care of. One of those ways is to continue like we're going at $7 million and we get further and further behind every year. One option, and the reason I've always shown you 3 years out, is that we looked at these broken down into 3 phases, and we went to the county commission and looked at them like a capital projects. a building program, where we would ask for $30 million. They would go out to the bond market and fund it. And I always said that's the analysis of you're going to buy a truck, and do you use your money or the bank's money? And I kind of felt like that was always using our money. The third option is what's called an ESOC. And there's a lot of districts out here doing this. On Thursday night, I've invited one company. And I want you to understand, there's no allegiance. There's nothing with this particular company, but I wanted you to hear from them how the program works and give you some examples of systems that they've worked with. At the bottom of this capital projects is $16.5 million for an LED lighting package. And Mr. Beaudry will back me up. That's where the money is. I'm just going to be up front and honest with you. The LED lighting is where our district's money that we can get our hands on to fund this project. In our LED lighting program, once we get all 50 schools, well, now let me back up. Look, John Coleman, Rocky Fork Middle, Rocky Fork Elementary, Rockville High School all have LED lighting. The rest of our district does not. When it's the light fixtures in the classrooms, it's the parking lot lights, it's the stadium lights, it's the football, baseball, it's all of that. It's every light that we have on our campuses. I believe that once we get all of those schools converted to LED lighting, we can cut our electric usage by a little over $3 million a year. Now, y'all have been very gracious in the EESI program. We've done a number of programs through there over the years where we've saved money on our electrical cost. We haven't actually put that money in our pocket. We've used that money to add new schools and not increase the budget for our utilities. That's how we've saved that money. We've been able to reduce our electrical costs enough that next year we added a new school, but the budget for the utilities didn't go up. That's how we use that money. What I'm proposing with this particular type of program, we can put out an RFP. There's about 8 to 9.
My analysis of where our problems are and what it's going to cost to fix it. Roofing, electrical, lighting. We can use the electrical savings to fund this program. In other words, we would, when the $3 million goes down, we write a check for $3 million. Instead of using that to add another school, when we add a school, our electrical budget would have to go up in the future. But they guarantee off the meter. I don't mean calculations and math. We review the meter prior to it, and then the meter after it's done. So it's real electrical savings, which equates to our bill. We still put that money in our budget, but instead of writing a check to Middle Tennessee Electric, we write a check to these guys. And we do it over a period of years. Based on the dollar figure that we're looking at, they'll calculate up whether it's 15 years or 18 years or 20 years. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to heal all our wounds, but I'm with the director on this. We cannot continue to put these things off. the HVAC, the roofs, if you look at these roofs, we got $15 million worth of roofs over the next 3 or 4 years that we're already beyond their 20-year life cycle. We've done, my predecessors have done great jobs at Band-Aiding these buildings, and we're at a point where we can't Band-Aid them anymore. We've kicked the can, we gotta fix it. And if we've gotta look at all options that we have at our disposal to get these things fixed. And if we can't go to the county and get the money, the county's not gonna look at, loaning us the money like we would a school project. This is our next option. And I think you as a board need to be given all the tools in the toolbox to make the decisions on which way we go. So on Thursday night, these folks are gonna come. I've given them 15 minutes. Because they can talk for hours, and I'm not gonna sit here and listen to them, and I'm not gonna ask you guys to. They're gonna speak about 10 minutes on what the program is and how it works. And then they're gonna speak the last 5 minutes. They're gonna give you some examples of some school systems that they've worked with. They're working with Williamson County, they're working with Murray County, they work with Knox County, they work with Montgomery County. And I'm not proposing that these are the guys that we go with. Now, by state law, if you all wanted to do it, the director and I could pick a company tomorrow and go to work. Because by state law, they're no different than an architectural firm or anything like that. I wouldn't recommend we do it that way. If we were to do this, I would request that we would do an RFP. We would have these folks send us their proposals, we vet the proposals, and we go from there. And basically with this program, we use the savings from the LED lighting that we would generate to pay the note to take care of a large portion of what's on this list.
What was that program called again?
It's an ESOC, E-S-O-C.
Thank you.
Mr. Bowdry, I think, has a...
Just follow up with Mr. Lee is, this board knows that the director and I and Mr. Lee, we've been looking for all sorts of ways to fund these projects that are needed. We brought it to the board as far as, of course, a bill that went up in front of the General Assembly for giving additional revenue back to us for capital projects. Of course, that was pulled because of the current issues going on right now with COVID. We approached the County Commission and the IDB to create a pilot program similar to Williamson in Hamilton County, and the commission decided or the steering committee voted to stop that. So I just want to let you all know that we have tried, the director and us, we have tried to find revenue outside of property tax increases for these needed capital improvements, and this is just one more way to fund these projects, or some of them.
I just got a comment. Mr. Lee, if you remember back when we did the controls back years ago, that's basically the same type of program, correct?
It's very similar in nature, yes, sir.
It pays for itself as you go along.
Yes, sir. That is correct.
My second comment is, what bothers me or what disturbs me a little bit is if you go with this 7.3 to the commission as a budget item, what kind of chance do you think we have of getting that amount, for one? Two, it seems like every time we go with something, we always get cut somewhere. So my next question is, what else you gonna cut? So I'm sort of to the point, my think's about like Mr. Estes. I think you go with what you got and add the $1.5 million to it and then see what happens. That's, you're gonna get cut, or we're gonna get cut, one way or another. I don't know. I just hate to keep going deeper and deeper year after year.
So it sounds like from the way the Health and Ed Committee responded that, again, they're kind of waiting to see what the final numbers are going to look like. So 20, or I guess tax revenue or what have you, when will they have those figures? Do we know?
You're talking about sales tax, of course, that's what everybody's focused on up there right
Right.
now, is what is sales tax going to do? Well, up until now, it was, 4 to 6% coming over budget. And this is so fresh that we're still waiting for March's numbers. What I've done, so we don't have to wait, and I say March's numbers because March sales tax is collected from the vendors, from the restaurants, from the stores. It is then sent up to Department of Revenue, and at that point, it comes back to us a couple months later. So we wouldn't see, if we were just sitting watching what the county trustee receives from the state, that's going to be 2 months from now is when we would see that actual drop. So I've gotten in contact with State Department of Revenue with some of their research analysts, and the chief research analyst is actually sending me the CITUS data and it's not identifying the actual business. I want to be clear. I'm not watching businesses. I'm not the governor tracking a cell phone, but they're breaking it down by trade of what retail, what restaurants. So I hope within the next couple of weeks I can see what March is doing in Rutherford County for local option sales tax. So, and I'm working with Lisa Nolan on this so we can track what we're seeing, up to date as soon as the Department of Revenue receives it from the retail establishments. So to answer your question though, right now, sales tax is looking good up until it's a mystery until that this month's receipt or March is processed revenue and we get that information.
This is all brand new territory. And if we didn't have the final numbers for 2 months from today, that will be about 10 days before the final budget would normally be passed, late June. Now, and I have to say, I don't remember the last time that this county did not pass its budget on time. Now, maybe it's happened, but I don't recall it. And Mr. Hodge made a very important point a minute ago, and I kind of want to underline a little bit what he said, and I'm kind of a stubborn person myself sometimes. If I ask each one of you, or you ask me, just what is your job on the school board? Well, I mean, we could talk about a lot of things, but we're supposed to be taking care of children, educating them for the future. That's our mission statement, which I used to have memorized and have now successfully forgotten. But you know exactly what I'm talking about. Well, when I got here from the commission, I wasn't too sure about, why do you send things up here to the courthouse that are probably not going to pass? Well, the answer to that, I don't know, I was kind of wavering there. But in talking to Mr. Hodge at that time and Mr. Blair and Mr. Estes, I kind of came around to agree that we need to ask what our students need. Period. And I'm sorry if you're having funding problems. I am. I've sort of been there a little bit, but I'm sorry you're having funding problems. But by golly, that's your job. That's the county commission's job. That's the main thing that they do. And I don't know what kind of, I guess you're going to come in with some options on Thursday. I'm not sure, but you're going to show us what you're going to reduce and to make up for the $1.5 million.
Yes, sir.
And we're going to have to decide whether we're going to do that or not, or if we're going to do like Mr. Hodge said, at least deserve some study, and that is keep trying for the full amount. And I'm all right with that. But we've never had a problem here since I've been serving either place with Mr. Gill or with Mr. Odom or with Mr. Spurlock. You can go up there and you ask for exactly what you need to serve nearly 50,000 students and I think 49 or 50 schools. As long as you can back it up with facts and figures of why you need these things, I'm okay with it. So we'll take a look, I guess, at it on Thursday.
Anyone else? I have to agree with you, Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, sir.
We're not gonna do anything but get further behind if we don't ask.
Well, gosh, I don't know how many times Mr. Young's got to say that. He said it every meeting, and at least recently, and we cannot do that. That's correct. We can see what's going to happen.
Okay. Where were we? We go, talk about redoing the,
Fiscal 2020, 2021 medical insurance rates.
The board asked about what our health insurance is going to be, so we finally have those rates, and they're in front of you. Let me take you through these real quick. On what you have in front of you on the 2021 rates, that's for the Board of Education. There had been some pretty marked increases. As you can see, the copay plan on the top had a 9.5% increase in premiums. The deductible plan had a 14% increase in premium, and the HRA was a 4% increase for that plan. For the county and the Board of Education combined, it was around $5 million increase in premiums. Thus began the discussion of how that was going to be appropriated out between an increase in employee contribution, an increase in the employer contribution. The original proposal that was on the table would have been an increase to our general purpose school fund, and for the most part, some of it, small amount would go in federal projects, small amount would go in cafeteria. The majority of it would hit the general purpose school fund with a number of $3,042,288. That's for existing employees. That would be our share in the GPS fund with, of course, then whatever growth positions we would add and budget for with the over around 1,000 students more that we've brought in this year, of course, with the required state student to teacher ratio, we'd obviously be bringing additional positions for teachers before you. So that would have increased as well, around 1.9 million, or I'm sorry, it would back up. That would be over the $3 million there. What was finally decided on by the budget committee the other night, and this will go in front of the county commission on Thursday night, is these rates. As you see at the very bottom in the column that says increase in ER employer contributions, the very bottom Board of Education annual total cost is the $1,755,457, which that will be more when I bring the budget to you because we have those growth positions for the teachers with all the additional new students coming on. One thing that's highlighted here too is the HRA plan. We have quite a few individuals that are in, or employees that are in the HRA plan. Look down towards the bottom. On the second column, it's got current enrollees. We have 1,009 employees enrolled in individual employee coverage, and I'm just using these as an example. Up until now, well, currently, 100% of the contribution percentage was covered for these employees' premiums, health premiums, if they participated in the wellness reduction plan. Under this new plan that was approved by the budget committee the other night, the contribution percentage for an employee individual in HRA plan would drop from 100% to 95%. As you see in front of you, they would pay $30.25 a month for that coverage for 10 months, the 10-month period, if they participated in employee contribution. Or, I'm sorry, if they participated in the wellness reduction program. A bit of good news is the budget committee recommended, and this is going before the full commission, that the wellness reduction requirements be waived for this coming year because of the COVID issue with not being able to go to the doctor to do, elective things as far as just wellness checks, things like that. So the county commission will be looking at waiving those requirements. So basically, all our employees would be receiving that wellness reduction should the commission vote for that. We do have actually quite a few employees that don't participate in that. So that would be a discount for them for their medical insurance premiums for this next year. So it dropped in the HRA, the contribution dropped from the 100%, 95% for employee and spouse, 96% for employee and child, and 94% employee and child, which is what we are under currently, the contribution percentage, to what you have in front of you, the 95% for employee individual, and then 90% for the rest of the different plan options. But the main thing that I'd point out to you is that middle column, the increase in EE, employee contribution, that is what the increase will be for an employees on their premiums should they elect to take medical coverage in the different plans, the co-pays, the deductibles, and the HRA. And on the question is, of course, is the county, on the county employees, they, of course, are paid, they are deducted on a 12-month deduction plan where we are on 10 for health insurance for our employees. When you break down the rate for the county plans, the county participants, they're paying the exact same as our employees are paying. They actually, if you're under an HRA, employee individual, on the county side, they actually pay for what it's worth 3 cents more a month than what our employees would pay. Or I'm sorry, 3 cents more a year, I apologize, than what we pay. But my point is, the county side employees are paying the same rates as the Board of Education employees will be paying in this plan. We're not taking the heavy end of the lifting.
Mr. Boulder, how are the revenues and expenditures running up to this point?
We're tracking well for right now. And the revenues, of course, and once again, when it's up to now, we were doing well up until, this issue, where we were coming under our budget for expenditures overall. And the revenue was coming in to date well for this fiscal year at this point. Now, we're going to be saving, we have had this discussion that we are seeing savings in some items like substitute teachers. We're not using our contract service for that. We're not having to expend funding for SRO overtime and ambulance costs for games. And of course, if prom is canceled, then we won't have that expense because that's a pretty good expense for those two items. But for the SRO and coverage there. But utilities, they're slightly down. So all in all, we're okay right now in our budget.
As far as medical goes last year, do you remember what the revenue versus expenditures was?
For medical insurance?
Yeah, medical. For the county.
Oh, for the county?
Yeah.
It was.
Basically what was paid in and what was paid out.
He had. Well, the increase, that right there is the increase. I'll bring it to you Thursday night.
Okay,
I apologize
okay.
for not having that with me in front of me.
Mr. Perry? And I don't know, this may be a question for the director, I don't know, but you just brought up something, this is totally unrelated to this, but while I'm thinking about it, the question, because you brought up the subject of SROs. What has happened to those sheriff's deputies that, since the schools have closed down, have they been able to absorb and keep them working, or
Yeah, they did. They put them on patrol.
Some are on patrol, some are actually still patrolling our schools.
Okay.
When we had the disbursement of the electronic devices, there was an SRO at each of those schools as that was, so the SRO for Blackman High, those SROs while Blackman High was giving out those laptops, they were at those schools.
Okay, so none of them have had to be furloughed or laid off?
No, ma'am.
Because of our school closures? Okay.
No.
I didn't think so, but check, thank you.
On to, does anybody else have any questions on the medical insurance? On this? Said it's not pretty. At least one small item, good news, is the vision, the employee vision and dental coverage, which is of course covered by 100% by the employee. Those rates are going to stay the same for next fiscal year. And I've also, the life insurance and the long-term disability rate will stay the same. That's what
Dental
was mentioned
stayed the
before.
same too. You got anything else?
I think that's it. One last thing, I think I sent to y'all earlier about, and this is a good question about the SROs. You know, we've been having some vandalism taking place. I know we also had some illegal dumping and things of that nature. Just want to let the public know that we are having patrols. Make sure that we're not dumping illegally, and obviously students, make sure you're not doing anything that's going to get you in trouble, because we catch you, we will prosecute you to the umpteenth extent.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, either tonight or Thursday night, can we have an update as far as the prom and graduation goes? We're still getting a lot of calls on that.
Right now, I don't see the prom happening. That's a school decision on that. I don't see that happening unless it's later on in the summer or somewhere near that. In terms of graduation, we've got a plan in place where there was a meeting that took place last week with all the high school principals. We do have some plans in place. What we're waiting on is the governor, and he's supposed to come out tomorrow and tell us a little bit about what the rest of the school year is going to look like, and we'll go from there. But we do have several options. That's the reason why we said we didn't cancel anything. We've got some things. One of the things that we have to keep in mind is it may be different. You know, some of the options include using our stadiums, doing multiple graduations. You know, breaking it up so it's not so large. And that could be an option. That could be a good option. We'll just have to see where we are at that time. But we have not taken away any graduations.
We should know that Thursday night then, maybe.
Hopefully, we'll know what it looks like.
I would like to ask that I don't know how we clarify it one more time with these bus drivers, but we need to clarify. I got a phone call yesterday from one. I got a visit from one today. There's still a lot of confusion, and I think a lot of the confusion is coming from social media, but we still got to clarify to those guys somehow that their contract is for 180 days. They're going to get paid the same this year as they got paid last year.
We've sent out emails, we've sent out letters, I like you, I've had, I bet, a dozen in the last week, and I don't know where this is coming from.
I don't either. It was
But
social media.
and the last one I talked to today was actually happened to be a gentleman that I went to high school with. So I was a little more candid with him because of our personal relationship. But I've told everyone that has talked to me the same thing you're telling them. They have a contract for 180 days and they're going to get paid that contract. This board has done nothing differently from that, and I do not see the board doing anything differently than that, and they will get paid.
As far as Rutherford Academy and Genesis, we are treating that the same as the special ed buses that we.
That's correct. That's correct.
I just hope this clears it up.
Me and you both.
All right, anyone else? Mr. Lee, Mr. Beaudry, thank y'all for your information. Hopefully we can work something out before June. All right. We'll see everybody Thursday night, 5 o'clock. We're adjourned.